What's going on, guys? It's your boy Jacob from Topside MMA, and today I'm coming at you with my full card breakdown for UFC 323. It was nice we had a little bit of a week off, so for everyone who was celebrating Thanksgiving, happy late Thanksgiving. Hopefully you had some time to relax with your families, chill, kick your feet up, and enjoy some time off. But hey, now that we're back, we're ready to kick it in full gear. UFC 323, it's going to be a banger of a card. I'm super excited for this one. So you guys already know in this video, we're going to break down every single fight, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to make your picks and your bets this week. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, first up, we got Naimov versus Mairon Santos. Now, I got to be honest with you guys. Out of every single fight on this entire card, this is one of the fights that I'm probably the least excited about, just because I'm not super high on either one of these guys. And, you look at Naimov, he's had double the amount of UFC experience compared to Mairon Santos. You could look at that and say, okay, why is he this big of an underdog? We just haven't seen him perform that well against a high level of competition. Whereas Mairon Santos, honestly, we haven't seen too much of that either, but we've seen from Naimov, when he takes these steps up in level of competition, he hasn't performed the best. And that's one thing I want to talk about. We're going to go over in this video, new kind of style for these breakdowns. I'm going to go over some of their most recent fights. Got the screen. Hopefully you guys like this. Hopefully you guys can see this pretty well. But yeah, I just want to go over some of the recent fights and kind of talk about what has stood out to me from both guys in terms of the positive and the negative, and kind of how it's affecting my picks overall for these fights. So we can break down Naimov first. As you can see on the left, I have all of his most recent fights. Now you can see with his record, he's performing decently well against a lower level of competition. Guys like a Bogdan, a Con Ofli, not the best level, but when he kind of takes that step up in competition against a guy like a Felipe Lima, we saw he got submitted in the third round there, and it wasn't a terrible look per se, because Felipe Lima is a very high level guy. I don't know, his record at the time was 12-1. I believe he's what now, like 13-2 after he just took that loss to Peyton Talbot. Very competitive back and forth fight though. It was a 29-28 loss that he took in that spot against Peyton Talbot, so I don't really hold that loss too much against Naimov. It wasn't the worst look. It's just we can look at his record and say, okay, when this guy's getting those steps up in competition, he's not performing the best. Even if you go back a couple fights in this fight against Nathaniel Wood, that fight was crazy. Nathaniel Wood, that fight as a whole was crazy. Nathaniel Wood should have got at least a draw in that spot, because Naimov, it was, I forget if it was in Abu Dhabi, it was overseas. He had the judging going for him. He had the ref going for him in that spot. Naimov commits 2 fence grabs. He commits 2 nut taps. So it's like he committed 4 fouls. Not a single point was taken in a fight that should have been a draw. It ended up going his way. So it's like, I look at his record and I can see every time that he's stepped up and that level of competition has gone above a guy like a Bogdan or a Con Ofli, he's not really performed all that well. So that's when I look at this line and I can see that, okay, Naimov plus 205 underdog. I can kind of see where they're going at with this. But if you look at Mairon Santos, I don't think he's really warranted to be this big of a favorite. Now, in his most recent fights, we could see when he fought Sadiq Yusuff, I do rate that win decently, but it's Sadiq Yusuff in the 2025 version of him. Not the best look. It's more of a washed Sadiq Yusuff that wasn't a peak in his prime, hungry Sadiq Yusuff. So I don't really want to put a ton of weight behind that fight. Although he got the win, fair, he got it. He looked good in that spot. It's not the same version that we saw from Sadiq Yusuff years ago. So I don't have a ton of emphasis put on that fight in terms of how I'm making my pick for this one. And before that, in the Francis Marshall fight, you guys can look it up. It's a really cool website. It's called, I believe it's like MMAdecisions.com or something like that. You can go back and they have every single MMA decision that's ever happened from like big events like the UFC, PFL, stuff like that, big organizations. But every single UFC fight, they have it on there. And you can see where the analysts score, or you can see the main judges, like the 3 judges that score. Then you can see the related analysts and like journalists. They have like usually 10 to 15 of them where they give their own scores, and then they have a public pool where they can see where all the public votes come in. People can go on the website and vote for who they thought won the exact score. They can score round by round. It's super cool. If you go and look at the MMA decisions for that fight against Mairon Santos versus Francis Marshall, everyone had it going against Mairon Santos in that spot. I believe it was 92% of people scored it for Francis Marshall in that spot. So it just goes to show Mairon Santos, yes, you can look at his stats here. You can see he's technically 3-0 in the UFC, but however, it shouldn't be. He should be 2-1. So it's like Francis Marshall is a good level opponent. However, he's not like some world beater. And although it was a back and forth fight, we just saw, I don't want to say lapses, but we saw negative signs from Mairon Santos in that spot. Defensively in the striking, he was a bit crazy at times in the sense of he got clipped multiple times in that fight. I believe it was early in round 1 or later in round 1 or later in round 2, first 2 rounds. Francis Marshall drops Mairon Santos. It did not look good, so we've seen his chin exposed too. So it's like there are a bunch of red flags for both guys in this fight that I can't really be too confident in either side. my main, I guess, focal point for that's kind of pushing me towards Mairon Santos is just the fact that he's 25 years old. Honestly, he's 25 years old. He's going to get better and better with every single fight. And although he's not fighting the absolute highest level of competition in the UFC so far, he's still looking pretty good because I still rate wins like a Francis Marshall. I still rate that pretty well. Even Sadiq Yusuff, although the 2025 version of him is pretty washed, he might be mentally checked out at this point, even though he's not that old. I think he's only like, 31 or 32. Still, it's just not the same level of win, but he has looked good at 25 years old. So you got to figure if he's looking this good so far in the UFC at 25, we're going to see him improve from fight to fight to fight. Whereas with Muhammad Naimov, I don't really know if I can say the same with him. So I got to have a slight lean for Mairon Santos in this spot, but I'm really not that confident. I don't know why the line is quite this wide. It doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. If something's standing out for you guys in the spot, let me know. I'm not really connecting the dots on this to see why Mairon Santos is such a huge favorite. We could see Muhammad Naimov come in with a really heavy wrestling and grappling game plan that could prevent or kind of cause some type of troubles for Mairon Santos. So overall, low confidence pick. I'm not super confident in Mairon Santos, but I guess I got to lean his way. Maybe he's going to be a bit quicker in the striking. He should be a bit ahead on the feet. So we'll have to see how this one goes. But yeah, not really confident either way. But the pick's got to be Mairon Santos. But anyway, next up, we got our boy Iwo Baraniewski versus Ibo Aslan. Now, this is a weird one too. You look at the line. I don't want to say it's mind-blowing off of Ibo Aslan's recent performances, but it's not exactly what I was expecting. Now, we can look at some of their most recent fights. We got Iwo Baraniewski's record. He just got a really fast knockout on his Dana White's Contender Series debut, as you can see, against Muhammad Ali, who was 4-0 at the time. He looked great in that spot, so I kind of get why this line is going for him. He's a minus 200 in the spot. It kind of makes sense. 27 years old. He's got a great run so far. And on Ibo Aslan, on the other hand, his last two fights have looked absolutely terrible. Now, his most recent two fights, first being against Ion Cutelaba and this actual most recent one being against Billy Elikana, they were both terrible looks, but for completely different reasons. Now, in his fight against Ion Cutelaba, his grappling was quite literally exposed. I mean, it was like a fraud check in terms of the grappling for Ibo Aslan. He looked absolutely terrible. Ion Cutelaba hurt him on the feet, landed takedowns, got the mount at will, and at that point, he wrapped up a submission so damn fast. I mean, how fast was it? It was 2 minutes and 51 seconds in the first round. That goes to show how bad his grappling looked in that spot. And then we saw after he took some time off, because that was February of 2025. Then he comes back July of 2025. He went to Dagestan, I believe. I'm pretty sure he went to Russia. He was training his grappling. He said, okay, I'm really working on the grappling. That's my weak spot. I really need to improve in that area. What does he do? He comes out there and looks like a shell of his former self. I mean, he went from a guy who was this marauder, just power puncher, walking you down, trying to take your head off with every single shot, to the most timid, scared, soft striker we've ever seen. I mean, that fight against Billy Elikana was so terrible. It was just this boring back and forth point striking match. It looked like they were sparring. It did not look like an actual UFC fight. It looked like training footage that we saw from his camp. I mean, that's how bad he looked in that spot. So you have those most two recent fights where he's gone from this world beater who's just knocking everyone's head off with this insane strength to absolute softy. I mean, like, he doesn't want to go out there. It looks like he doesn't even want to be there. So I look at this line and I can say, okay, Iwo, I get his momentum. He just got a 30-second knockout in his Dana White Contender Series over a very highly accomplished grappler. So it's like, I get why it's going this way. However, I really feel like people are completely writing off Ibo Aslan in the spot. And I know his last two fights have been absolutely terrible. His most recent fight was so damn bad, I genuinely had the thought in the back of my mind of, did this guy get paid off? I mean, it was that bad. Just in terms of his complete stylistic changeup. He went from one style of fighting to the complete opposite. I mean, it's kind of crazy how much of a transition he made. So it kind of raised the question of, maybe he took a little bit of that Saudi money. I don't know. It was overseas when that fight happened too. So I don't know if they were in Abu Dhabi or where, but they were in that part of the world. Maybe something was going on behind the scenes. I don't really know, but it did worry me. It's just with Iwo Baraniewski, he's so damn young, 27 years old, and he's green too, 6-0 record right now. And although, I mean, you can't really blame him at only 27 years old, I just don't really know if this is a spot I can really get behind Iwo Baraniewski. In terms of the pick, I don't mind picking Iwo in the spot. Ibo Aslan has shown time and time again in his most two recent fights, there are major lapses in both his judgment and his overall skill set. So the pick-wise, I got to go Iwo Baraniewski. He's been on this hot streak, and it's more with Iwo Baraniewski. I'm more willing to take the risk, take the gamble in the sense of there are unknowns for him. And I'd rather go with those unknowns as opposed to Ibo Aslan's unknowns. Because with Iwo Baraniewski's unknowns are, okay, this guy's green, he's very young. How good is he? You know, how is he going to look when he takes this step up in level of competition? Because Ibo Aslan's no world beater, but he is a step up in competition that is pretty notable compared to his previous opponent. So I'd rather take the risk and pick Iwo Baraniewski in this spot and say, okay, we're going to see just how good this kid is in this spot at only 27 years old. He's going to look better and better with every single fight. Whereas Ibo Aslan, if you're taking the risk picking him, you're taking the risk of hopefully he's going to not look like a soft guy who doesn't want to be there anymore. I don't really like taking that risk. You know, that doesn't sound all that enticing. And we saw his grappling get exposed too. So you have to take the risk of, okay, maybe within the last 10 months, his grappling has gotten a ton better. And maybe now in the last 4 or 5 months, he has heart and he really wants to be here. And he's going to go back to the marauder who's trying to knock people's heads off. Way too many unknowns for me there, so I really would rather just pick the Iwo Baraniewski side, although minus 210 is a bit wide considering we have seen when Ibo Aslan is on, he's on, and he might not be the most technical, but if he touches your chin, he's probably going to hurt you, and we haven't really seen Iwo Baraniewski go through that adversity yet throughout his short career, especially at the UFC level, because that footage is non-existent. This is his UFC debut, so I think there are some red flags on both sides for this fight, but I'm going to go with the guy who showed me less red flags. I'm going to go with the guy who showed me less holes in his game overall, especially in terms of the mentality and the mindset. Ibo Aslan, after he got submitted like that against Ion Kuchalaba, it really kind of changed his mentality, and maybe it's a mental thing. You know, it could be both for him, so that worries me even more. You got the physical and you got the mental, not to mention the skill set involved with his poor grappling. So there are way too many red flags and holes in his game behind Ibo Aslan to really get behind him in the spot. However, this is one, in terms of the bets, I'd rather just sit back and kind of avoid this one. I don't really see a ton of value on either side, but yeah, in terms of the pick, I'll go Iwo Baraniewski, but ever so slightly, not the most confident in that. But next up, we got Mansur Abdul-Malik versus Antonio Trocoli. Now, I got to say, this is really not a hard one to break down. It's probably going to be a one-sided ass kicking, and I don't really have all that much faith for our boy Antonio Trocoli. Now, look at their recent fights. We haven't seen Mansur Abdul-Malik tested quite at the highest level. You look at his recent fights, the Cody Brundage fight, he looked good in that spot. Both guys were really timid. They were kind of scared of each other's power, so I don't really rate that as a really good fight or a bad fight. It's kind of just like a, it is what it is for that one. And you look behind that, Nick Klein, yes, there was a really bad spot in that fight. You know, Mansur Abdul-Malik, we saw him get clipped. I believe it was like a spinning elbow or a spinning back fist. There was some tricky shot that Nick Klein had that really wobbled Mansur Abdul-Malik. I mean, he could have been knocked out in that spot, but he was able to recover, bounce back. So I like seeing that. You know, a guy got hurt. He didn't panic. He didn't freak out. He didn't kind of just fall apart. He was able to really collect himself, get back, and the second round started. Nick Klein was pretty much death gassed, and at that point, he was able to find the finish. So I like what I've seen so far, and before that, Dusko Todorovic, good fight. I mean, Dusko Todorovic, he has kind of had a little bit of a resurgence in his career. You know, he's had a couple bounce back spots, so I don't really want to put too much weight on those fights. I'm more so, and especially, even the Wes Schultz fight in the Dana White Contender Series. Wes Schultz, the funny thing about this is you can see too on Tapology, or they don't show it, but he was supposed to have, I believe this fight was supposed to happen. For some reason, I thought it was a Contender Series fight. For some reason, I thought they were supposed to fight in the Contender Series originally when this fight got canceled. Maybe not, though. Maybe it was a UFC fight. But I don't know why. For some reason, I thought Wes Schultz stepped up on short notice in this spot on the Contender Series. Correct me if I'm wrong on this spot, but I thought that Mansur Abdul-Malik was supposed to fight Antonio Trocoli on the Dana White Contender Series, but he pulled out. Because I remember after watching that fight, in his post-fight interview, he kind of says, like, man, like, Trocoli was supposed to get this ass kicking, not Wes Schultz, man. He was like, give Wes Schultz another chance. He seems like a good dude. He wasn't supposed to take this ass kicking. Trocoli was supposed to. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's where in my head I'm thinking of this. I could be thinking someone else, but I swear that's what my head was at for this one. But so yeah, this fight has meant to be happening. It's been brewing, it's been cooking, and it's kind of like a what's his name, Atabagatier. It kind of feels like that type of a spot. And I don't really see a ton of ways for Antonio Trocoli to really look great in here. We saw in his fight against Shara Magomedov, we saw that fight did go into the third round, and you could say, okay, maybe his striking looked really good. How was he able to survive into the third round of that spot? He was hugging for his dear life in that spot. I mean, he was trying to hold on to Shara by any means possible, but by the third round, he couldn't get it. And there was one point in that fight where he had a takedown, but Shara, they were in the Middle East. He had this nasty fence grab, kept it on the feet, and he was able to prevent the takedown from happening in terms of he was able to prevent Antonio Trocoli from landing the takedown. You could argue, and I mean, it definitely did change the outcome of that fight. You know, who knows what would have happened if Antonio Trocoli got that takedown. Who knows? But he didn't end up getting it. They were in that part of the world. They like their guy Shara. The ref went blind there for a moment, but it is what it is. That fight did go long, and eventually Shara got the knockout because we saw Antonio Trocoli, his cardio just wasn't able to go that long. He can't push 3 full rounds when he has a grappling-heavy game plan, and his striking is not great on the feet. So how does Antonio Trocoli win this spot? Who the hell knows? Because I really do think, and when Antonio Trocoli, he was able to have some success against a guy like Shara against the cage when he was grappling, really not even landing takedowns, just like holding him against the cage. He's not going to be able to do that against Mansur Abdul-Malik. Mansur Abdul-Malik has the wrestling background that a guy like Shara doesn't. Now, Mansur Abdul-Malik probably doesn't have the hands and the striking quite yet in this point in his career compared to a guy like a Shara Magomedov. However, he has the wrestling base. So, Antonio Trocoli, the only way that I see him winning this fight would be through the grappling. I think he's a sub or bust, honestly, in the spot, because his grappling's not bad. I will say, out of any way that he could win this fight, it probably would be the grappling in terms of this actual submission threat. That's probably the only way he's going to win this fight. He's not going to beat Mansur Abdul-Malik in the wrestling. It's not going to happen. Mansur does have a wrestling background that he can rely on. He's going to be bigger. He's going to be stronger. He's going to be much more powerful in the raw wrestling compared to a guy like Antonio Trocoli. So in terms of getting it to the ground, Mansur Abdul-Malik has a really nice ground and pound. He can take guys down, and when he gets landed to you, he lands shots on your head, you're gonna go night-night. And we've seen Antonio Trocoli put out before. I don't see how this fight would go any different than that. I feel like Mansur Abdul-Malik, maybe he's able to land takedowns. Maybe he goes for a wrestling heavy game plan. I just don't really see why he would need to. He is going to be at a slight disadvantage in terms of the height. As you can see, Antonio Trocoli, 6'6", very tall dude. So maybe it's a bit tough or a bit more challenging for him to reach the head. Maybe he's like, screw it. I don't want to try and hit this guy's head from a mile away. Let me try and take it to the ground. I could see that. I just don't think Antonio Trocoli is going to be, in terms of his scrambling, going to be able enough to make this fight very competitive. I feel like I don't want to ramble too long about this fight, honestly. I feel like at some point Mansur Abdul-Malik is going to touch the chin of Antonio Trocoli, and at that point he's going to go night-night. I would be surprised if Mansur Abdul-Malik submitted Antonio Trocoli. I will say that. I feel like a knockout is 90% likely in this spot. But there's always those spots where it's like someone who never gets any submissions. I mean, he has 7 out of 8 wins by knockout, only 1 submission. It could be the one where he just beats the shit out of Trocoli, and then Trocoli flattens out, and then he somehow he just wraps up like a rear naked choke, like a more like basic submission. He's not doing any crazy shit. It could be like that. I feel like more than likely though, Mansur Abdul-Malik comes out here, keeps it on the feet. I don't even know why he would need to wrestle. He's not going to respect any of the power or the striking threat of Antonio Trocoli. So it's not like a Cody Brundage where Cody Brundage can knock your head off. Cody Brundage does have good power. Antonio Trocoli, he doesn't. So I don't think Mansur Abdul-Malik's going to be afraid of anything in the spot. He's probably going to walk Antonio Trocoli down, knock his head off, get a first-round knockout. We all go home because everyone and their mother parlayed up Mansur Abdul-Malik at minus 1,200, which is probably, and not even probably, it's absolutely insane. Statistically, it's not a good idea, but Mansur Abdul-Malik probably warrants the line, honestly. It's going to be not pretty for Antonio Trocoli. But anyway, that does it for this one. Next up, we got Edson Barboza versus Jalin Turner. I will say I don't even want to say worried. I think this is going to be not the best look for our boy Edson Barboza. I think at this point, at 39 years old, I do think Edson Barboza, he's reached the point. He has reached the washed status. Unfortunately, he's there. It's just every time in his recent fights, like every time he's getting hit, it doesn't look great. His speed is just not what it used to be. He does have the same power, but besides that, I just don't think he's going to be able to compete at a high level. And against a guy like Jalin Turner, I know there are some questions, there are some red flags, there are some concerns from the Jalin Turner side. He went to retire at 30 years old. The man retired. He came back. Now he's fighting again, almost like Tom Brady in the NFL. He came out and he's like, no, I want to come back. He came right back. And the thing about this, though, too, is interesting, is because you could look at this in the sense of Jalin Turner retired and came back, like, oh, shit, does the guy just need money? Why is he coming back? But what I've seen, and I was going through Jalin Turner's Instagram, he seems revitalized. He seems like he found God. He's getting all into religion now, which is great to see. You love to see it. God did. But you got to see it from Jalin Turner. It's like when I was looking through his stuff, I saw him kind of seeming like he found himself. He seems like he was saying in his post, I forget exactly what he was saying, but he was saying something along the lines of like, took some time off to kind of discover myself, figure out what I want to do with my life. And the fact that he's coming back now, pretty relatively recently too. I mean, pull you guys over. His most recent fight, what was it? March of 2025. So it's not like he's coming off of a 3-year layoff. He just really needed some time mentally to kind of reset, come back, because he's a very high level fighter. one, he's made some mistakes, but two, he's had some lapses in judgment. We can go through some of his recent fights, like in his fight against Ignacio Bahamondes, his most recent fight. I don't want to say he gave that fight away, but he kind of gave it away. I mean, the way he got submitted, I believe, yeah, it was a triangle choke. He kind of threw himself into the triangle, and it's like, we know Jalin Turner is a high-level grappler. I believe he's a BJJ brown belt. I don't know how he got submitted there. It almost seemed like he just didn't want to be there anymore. So it seemed more like a mental thing as opposed to a skill set thing. He just kind of seemed checked out. Wasn't the best look. And before that, the Renato Moicano fight, he didn't want to be the bad guy. He hurt him bad, especially after his last fight. We know against Bobby Green. That was a horrible, horrible late stoppage where he basically put Bobby Green out unconscious, out cold, and the ref's not stopping it. So he comes and lands more fall shots up. I mean, they probably gave Bobby Green CTE from those follow-up shots. So it makes sense. His next fight against Renato Moicano, he hurts Renato Moicano, but then he goes like a walk-off knockout, like, oh, I just finished the fight, like kind of like he went Carlos Prates mode of walk-off knockout, I'm done. Renato Moicano pops back up. I assume Jalin Turner probably adrenaline dumped because he got finished shortly after in the next round. So wasn't a good look, but at the same time, it makes sense when you look at the Bobby Green fight before that where he damn near killed the guy. So there was just little moments, like all of Jalin Turner's fights have these asterisks near them where it's like, it's more than beyond just what the record implies that we've seen from Jalin Turner. Because overall, Jalin Turner is a very high-level guy, and he's been very impressive throughout his career. He's just had these little moments, these little asterisks that have really held him back. Because you can look at his record too. 1-4 in the last 5, not a great look. And now you see him as a minus 270. You'd be like, okay, I'm going to take a shot on Edson Barboza. I personally do not think this line is wide enough. I think the value is on Jalin Turner, clear as day. I think Jalin Turner, very high confidence pick here. I think he should clearly win this just because I think he's going to be way sharper on the feet. You can see he has the reach advantage. He has the height advantage. He has the age advantage. He's a southpaw going against an orthodox. He has the better chin, and he's going to be landing the more powerful shots. Now, Edson Barboza, he has kicks like a damn donkey. We know that. He can hit you hard. It's just at this point in his career, he can take damage, or he can give damage, but he can't take it. Whereas Jalin Turner, we know he can give it and he can receive it. At this point, his chin's going to be better than Edson Barboza. The thing with Edson Barboza, I picked him in his last fight against Jakar Close. As you can see, or not my pick, but his most recent fight against Jakar Close. That was the fight for me where I said, okay, I watched that and I watched it back and I was like, Edson Barboza did not look good out there, man, because I am not high on Jakar Close. I know a lot of people say he's underrated. I've just never been high on Jakar Close. You know, hey, he's a fellow Patriot, so shout out to the Patriot. Nothing against him as a person. Just as a fighter, I haven't been super high on him throughout the years. But yeah, after that fight, I said, okay, that was not a good look. Everything Jakar Close was landed. And Jakar doesn't really have a ton of power. You know, he's not some killer knockout artist. He doesn't really hit that hard. So the fact that every shot that he's landing is wobbling Edson. You know, he's negatively reacting to every shot. And it's not because he's not tough. Edson Barboza is tough as nails. It's just, at this point in his career, he's been through way too many wars. He's suffered too much damage. And it's really starting to add up and weigh on his mental. So at this point, I just don't think Edson Barboza has it anymore. As sad as it is to say, absolute legend, nothing but respect for Edson Barboza. I just think he's over the hill. This seems like a really good bounce back spot for Jalin Turner. I think he probably gets a finish. I'd be surprised if he didn't finish Edson Barboza. I could see a knockout. I could see a submission. I could see it going either way. It could go to a decision. Maybe Jalin Turner's like, you know what, I'm 1-4 in my last 5. I need to play it safe. You know, I don't want to risk getting spinning heel kick knocked out by Edson Barboza at damn near 40 years old. Let me just play it safe. You know, let's keep a tight guard. Let's keep a tight striking base and kind of just point fight back and forth for 15 minutes. He could clearly win that way too. So I wouldn't completely rule out a decision, even though you look at his record, he's 0-4 to a decision. Hopefully we don't get there. But I do think that Jalin Turner clearly has a huge advantage in the spot across the board. And as long as his mentality is there, as long as he wants to actually be in the spot, as long as he wants to be back as a UFC fighter, he should clearly win this spot, clear as day. So the pick's got to be Jalin Turner. Pretty damn confident in that as well. But anyway, next up, we got Marvin Vettori versus Brunno Ferreira. Now, when I was doing my breakdowns for these, for every single fight, I always watch the tape. I come up with my own lines of where I think the line should be at, and then I go and check the actual odds, because I love doing that. If you guys don't do that, I highly recommend it, because then it takes all the biases out of you. You know, like the Mansur Abdul-Malik fight, I had it lined as like a minus 800. And it ended up being like a minus 1,200. I'm like, okay, you know, that makes sense. In this spot, I was really, when I thought about this, I was like, there's no way in hell that they will make Marvin Vettori an underdog. That would be too damn disrespectful to Marvin Vettori. And I told myself, if Marvin Vettori is going into this fight as a damn underdog, I will be putting some coin on Marvin Vettori. Of course, he's a minus 115. I mean, this fight's damn near a pick'em. I mean, he's a very, very, very slight favorite. they barely got me there. They barely got me because they're almost about to call my bluff there. But it's just with Marvin Vettori, man. I know he's looked so terrible in recent years. It's not been a good look from our boy Marvin Vettori. Mentally, he's probably checked out too. I don't know where his head's at. In his last fight, he lost, I believe, his brother. He recently passed away, and he kind of dedicated that fight to his brother. RIP to his brother, but it didn't really seem like, I thought, I really did think after that, he was talking about his brother, losing his family member like that, very traumatic, terrible thing. So I do feel terrible for Marvin Vettori in that spot, but I thought we might see a little bit more of a revigorated, kind of like, I don't know, hyped up Marvin Vettori, maybe a comeback Marvin Vettori, maybe an old Marvin Vettori coming back with the fire in him. He just didn't look great in that spot. So after that, I'm like, I thought that was the real chance of his mental and his mentality kind of coming back, kind of giving him a resurgence, because at only 32 years old, he is by no means past his physical spot where he can actually do well. It's more of a mental thing than physical for him in the spot. So I do worry about where he's at mentally, but you got to look through their recent records. You got to look through the fights. I mean, Marvin Vettori has fought the who's who of this entire division. I mean, you go years back, he's fighting guys like Izzy, Rob Whittaker, Roman Dolidze twice. He's fighting guys, it was just against Brendan Allen. Yeah, it wasn't the best loss in his most recent fight, but Brendan Allen came out looking like career best against RDR. So I put respect on every single one of his losses, even losses where he's kind of getting his ass kicked a bit. I still put respect on them because it's a very high level of competition. I mean, he's losing against Izzy, Rob Whittaker, Cannonier, Roman Dolidze, Brendan Allen. Those are respectable losses, regardless of how bad they might have been. They still are respectable losses. Whereas you look at Bruno Ferreira, he's losing to guys that he shouldn't be losing to. Like you look at the Abbas Magomedov fight. Maybe it's just that one, because Nursultan Ruzaboyev, he's a killer. I think he's underrated. So I actually rate that loss pretty highly. I don't mind that one all that much. The one that really rubs me the wrong way is the Abbas Magomedov fight. You can see he got choked out, arm triangle choke in round 3. He basically death gassed. That's all pretty much exactly what happened. He death gassed, and at that point, Abbas was able to land a takedown. There was a weird, tricky spot in that fight where I believe Bruno Ferreira was complaining about something. One of those two were complaining about something. Like Bruno looks over at the ref because he kind of like thinks the ref's talking to him or something. I forget exactly what happens, but he looks over trying to like communicate with the ref. And at that point, Abbas kind of like takes his chance of like, this is my moment. And then he advances to full mount. And at that point, the fight was over. He got the choke wrapped up. But so it's like, it has that asterisk of like, Bruno Ferreira is a very good grappler. It was just, he kind of got distracted for a split second. Abbas was able to get the mount. And at that point, it was over. So take that with a grain of salt. So it's hard to like say, okay, his grappling looked terrible in that spot. Who knows if he would have got to mount if he didn't look over and got distracted for a bit. But anyway, my point is his cardio looked absolutely terrible. And it's like, this is a spot where if Bruno Ferreira is a finish or bust early on, because when we see him go to the later rounds, his cardio starts to slow down. Marvin Vettori is a durable ass dude. We know Marvin Vettori. He has that granite chin. You got to kill him to put him out of there. And he has a very good grappling base too. So I don't know how this fight could look if it goes into the third round. Now, I could see, I don't know, maybe he has some success. Maybe Bruno Ferreira comes out hot first 2 rounds and he's able to really do enough on the scorecards to win the first 2 rounds and that banks him the fight. I will not be surprised if he gives up the third round. I'm almost kind of expecting it. I'm kind of expecting Marvin Vettori to win the third round, and maybe Bruno Ferreira wins the first round because he's a bit more fresh, a bit more explosive, and it's going to come down to that second round. I don't know how that's going to look, because we've seen Bruno Ferreira in his recent fights, like he was able to submit Jackson McVeigh. Short notice step up. What was he, like a minus 800 favorite? What was he? Minus 525? I think it was worse than that too. And before that, he's submitting Armen Petrosyan. He's a striker. Armen Petrosyan is a striker who wants to keep it on the feet. He is not a grappler. Abbas Magomedov was able to submit his ass. This is Solfus, respectable win. Phil Haas, say what you want about that. But it's just like, overall, we haven't seen the highest level looks from Bruno Ferreira to warrant him to be some favorite against Marvin Vettori, who's really fought the who's who for the last 10 plus years. So this is a tricky one to break down, because on one hand, Marvin Vettori is a bit washed mentally, not physically, mentally. And his skill set, even in the Brendan Allen fight, did not look good. So who's going to have their way? I don't really know, but I don't see Bruno Ferreira submitting Marvin Vettori. Marvin Vettori, very high level BJJ black belt. Although he's not getting submission wins at the UFC level all that much. I think he has like what? He's like 1 submission win at the UFC level. How many? UFC two submission wins, 7 decision wins. You guys can see this. Yeah, so it's like I don't really necessarily see him either guy getting a submission in the spot. However, Marvin Vettori is a dangerous enough grappler to the point where we've seen Bruno Ferreira when he's death gassed in the third round against Abbas Magomedov. Who knows? Maybe Marvin Vettori could wrap up a late submission, a round 3 submission against Bruno Ferreira. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised at all. So in this spot, honestly, I don't know how to line at this, because you could argue on one hand, okay, we know Brunno Ferreira is going to slow down, and we've seen that before. If he slows down, he could get submitted. Marvin Vettori, very durable guy. Brunno Ferreira is not going to finish him early on, so maybe if this goes late, Marvin Vettori is very live for a late finish. Or on the other hand, you could say, well, Marvin Vettori's looked absolute like shit. He's 1-4 in his last 5. He's looked terrible. He's looked to be in terrible form. Mentally, he seems checked out. Now we can get Brunno Ferreira, who's kind of been on a little bit of a tear recently, at a damn near pick 'em. The value's on Brunno. So I could see why people are looking at this fight either way. This just seems all around like a spot where I am totally fine just avoiding it, because my heart is telling me to pick Marvin Vettori, because I feel like he's just fought the who's who. He's fought the better level of competition. But I get why people are Brunno Ferreira. So I don't want to rant too long about this one. I don't want to make this video too damn long. I'll pick Marvin Vettori for now. I'm going to wait for weigh-ins, see what happens from both guys, see how they look on the scales, see how if Marvin Vettori looks checked out or not. The pick's going to be Marvin Vettori for now, but low confidence pick. Might end up pick flipping on this one. We will have to see. But anyway, flip you guys over. Next up, we got Nazim Sadykhov versus Ferreira Ziam. Now, I got to be honest. This is the fight that I am the most like scared for. My boy Nazim Sadykhov. I'm a huge Nazim Sadykhov fan. That is my guy. So I'm a bit worried for him in the spot. I'm not going to lie. And I'm biased. I will say, for this fight, I'm extremely biased. I'm not really a huge Ferreira Ziam fan, but I'm a huge Nazim Sadykhov fan. I love Nazim Sadykhov. That's my dog. So I'm a bit biased for him here. However, I will say, I'm worried for him in the spot. Biases aside, the pick's probably going to be Ferreira Ziam. Nazim Sadykhov, I love him because he's such a dog. He'll never give up on himself. He's going to make every fight fun. He's willing to stand and bang. He's willing to make it ugly. He'll make every fight a bar fight. He's not afraid of shit. He's tough as nails, tough as could be. I love Nazim Sadykhov, but in this spot, I think it's going to be a bit tricky for him. We've seen in his recent fights, he's had struggle even on the feet against guys who are not a high-level striker, or not as high of a level striker, like a Nicholas Mata, who I still put respect on him. Nick Mata, he's grown on me. I will say he's grown on me over time in terms of his skill set. He's better than I originally thought he was, especially after that fight when he fought against Nazim Sadykhov. He looked pretty damn good early on before he got finished. But it's we've seen him struggle. We've seen Nazim Sadykhov struggle against very technical guys who might not be willing to make fights a bar brawl. We've seen moments like that before. Even fights against a Nick Mata who's willing to stand and bang, make fights ugly. We've seen lapses in his defensive striking where he's been hit at times, and I know he has a really high guard. He's a bit stationary. He's just kind of keep walking you down. And against Ferreira Ziam, I just don't know if that's going to work. The main holes that we've seen in Ferreira Ziam throughout the years have really been his grappling. We know he's a striker at heart. He's a kickboxer. He wants to keep it on the feet. That's where he likes to be. However, in recent fights, we've seen his grappling has developed quite a bit. He's gone against guys, high-level guys we can bring over, like guys like Mike Davis, who really sleeper of a fighter. Pretty underrated. Mike Davis is a very high-level guy. He's well-rounded everywhere. And Mike Davis, he pulled guard 4 times within the first 2 minutes of that fight. You want to know why? Because he did not want to keep it on the feet. I don't know what was up with him in that spot. He looked pretty damn terrible in that fight. And Mike Davis is a good fighter, so I don't know. Maybe that was just an outlier for him. Maybe it was an off day. I don't know. But the fact that he did not want to keep it on the feet against a guy like Ferreira Ziam does worry me, because we already know. We saw too with Ferreira Ziam in that spot. His grappling and his scrambles looked really good. Because who did he get submitted by? Yeah, Terrance McKinney. This was years ago, 2022. It looked pretty rough. It was not a good spot. He got submitted very quickly. What was it? 2 minutes in the first round. But since then, even against guys like Matt Frevola, say what you want to get about Matt Frevola, not the highest level guy, has chin problems. However, Matt Frevola does have very high level wrestling. We've seen he trains with guys like Merab and Aljo. He's training with guys with some of the best wrestling and grappling on planet Earth. So Matt Frevola's grappling and wrestling is respectable. So the fact that Ferreira Ziam was able to keep it very competitive with guys like Matt Frevola and Mike Davis in the grappling makes me think he can probably do the exact same against Nazim Sadykhov. And on the feet, it's just, I don't know how Nazim Sadykhov is going to have a ton of success. I want him to. In my perfect world, Nazim Sadykhov comes out here, walks Ferreira Ziam down, round 1 knockout, starches his ass out cold. That would be my dream scenario here. Nothing against Ferreira Ziam. I'm just a big Nazim Sadykhov fan. It's just, I don't know how exactly he's going to do that. He's coming into the spot with a 6-inch reach disadvantage, and that's going to play a huge role in terms of how the striking is going to go. Now, he is a southpaw going against the orthodox fighter, so he'll have a little bit more tricky cards up his sleeve that'll help him out a bit. I just worry about the overall reach disadvantage. It's going to be a problem for him. Even his fight against Ismail Bonfim, that fight got stopped early, round 1, because he basically quit on the stool. So I don't really know how that fight would have gone if it would have gone longer. But even against guys like Visha Borsov, who is a boxer, who is not, I don't want to disrespect Sadykhov, not the highest level of competition. Still a dog, absolute beast, absolute dog. But we've seen holes before with the striking that they give me some worry against a guy like Ziam, who really is a pretty damn good striker. I mean, he's pretty damn talented. We could see his run in the UFC so far, 7-2, very respectable from a guy, especially this young too, 28 years old. We're going to see him get better and better. So I'm biased in this spot, and I want to pick Nazim Sadykhov so damn bad. I just feel like Ziam is probably going to be able to have his way with the range. He's probably going to be the trickier striker, more accurate at range. We even see defensively, because their accuracy is about the same, but defensively, he's much more defensively sound compared to Nazim Sadykhov. So I do have my worries. I feel like the best way for Nazim Sadykhov to win this fight would be trying to just grapple like crazy. Maybe he can just use his raw strength to kind of like use manpower to outdo Ziam. Maybe he can work him against the clinch, make it ugly. And he needs to be walking him down. We've seen from Ziam, he's a decent, he can counter strike pretty decently, but he needs to just make this ugly. If this is like a technical back and forth kickboxing match for 15 minutes, Nazim Sadykhov is really going to be at a huge disadvantage. But if he can walk him down, be the aggressor, kind of push forward, go throw caution to the wind and just walk him down and not respect anything coming back his way, I think Nazim Sadykhov could have a good shot in this. It's just a matter of if that'll happen. So, not super confident. My heart is telling me Nazim Sadykhov, but my brain is saying Ziam likely gets it done. So, I guess I got to pick Ziam ever so slightly. But Nazim Sadykhov is my boy. I'm going to be rooting for Nazim Sadykhov. I'm hoping he gets the job done, but it is what it is. But anyway, next up, we got Maycee Barber versus Karine Silva. Now, this is a weird one, too, because honestly, the matchmaking for this one is fire. I'm super excited about the matchmaking on this because you basically got two marauders. These two girls aren't exactly the most technical, but they got dog in them. They have absolute dog in them. That's the one thing we know for certain. We know both of these girls are not going to give up. They're not going to stop. And the thing that I like about this matchmaking is both of these girls want to be the one walking you down. They don't want to be, they're not counter strikers who are trying to play a technical game. No, they're trying to walk you down and kick some ass. I mean, that's why I do like this from a stylistic matchup. In terms of who gets their way, who's going to be the one who wins, who knows? Because they're both going to be the one wanting to be the one who's walking the other one down. So, I don't know. I do have some concerns. Now, I guess we could start with Karine Silva. Karine Silva, I do think has been a bit, I don't want to say a weight bully, but we've seen, her grappling's solid. She has good submission abilities. She can look good in the scrambles on the ground, but she is kind of a bit of a weight bully, especially in the striking. The striking's not great. She has a really flat-footed, really stationary Muay Thai base that we've seen kind of get picked apart in the past. Now, we can see with the recent fights against Rojo, we saw basically she just wasn't able to have any success. She was the one walking Rojo down in that spot. She was the one leading the offensive. She was walking her down in the striking. It's just she wasn't really able to have that much success. She has these front kicks that that she tries to land. She has a decent jab, but it's like besides that, she has a slow, just kind of, I don't know, just a slow, flat-footed base of striking that just against anyone who's a nimble striker who can be quick, they're going to beat her to the punch every single time. Now, she did have some moments of success, but Rojo is basically just a much more faster striker. She was a lot quicker in that spot. She was able to have a lot more success. Now, will Maycee Barber have that type of success? I don't really know. I don't really rate Maycee Barber striking very highly. I mean, we saw against Amanda Ribas, she was able to have a lot of success. That late combination she landed to end the fight, what was it, round 2, I believe? Yeah. The little combination that she had was some nice head kicks. She was switch stances. It was pretty neat. She looked pretty damn good in that last kind of, combination there that she landed to put her out. But I don't know. There are just lapses in her I've seen from Maycee Barber, even in like some of her takedown attempts. You look at them and you're like, oh, what is going on here? And some of the striking, it's like, ooh, not the best look. But she is young. I will say, Maycee Barber, 27 years old. She has room to improve. So I imagine she's going to get better with every single fight. The one worry that I have for Maycee Barber is her most recent fight. We could see her recent fight. It wasn't Rose, was it? No, it was Erin Blanchfield. Yeah. Her most recent fight against Erin Blanchfield. She's about to take this fight. I mean, the fight's on about 5 minutes before the fight starts. She gets sick. She pulls out. She can't do it anymore. I don't know. They have not really disclosed what the hell happened there. To this day, we don't really know. Was it a medical thing? Did she have a panic attack? Did she have anxiety? Did she pass out? Did she have some injury? I don't know. We don't know. It wasn't disclosed, so I don't really know how to take that, Is that a negative thing? Is that something that's going to affect her later on in her career? Is this something that's going to be a continual problem that we need to worry about? Who the hell knows? So maybe it has an effect in this fight. Maybe it doesn't. We just don't know. So that's a major concern for me. That's something I had to point out of. It is influencing my pick because I am leaning Maycee Barber because I do think Karine Silva, I don't want to say she's sub or bust, but even like in her last fight against Barboza, I picked Barboza in that spot, and I think she actually won that fight. I was kind of disappointed with the scorecards on that one. But yeah, she took that fight. Barboza took that fight on like a week's notice, and she made it that competitive. Now, I'm high on Barboza. I'm a big fan of Barboza. I think she's very slept on, but it goes to show Karine Silva, she ain't touching the belt. You know what I mean? At 31 years old, we're going to see the best that we've seen from her. She can't get better. You know, I'm not going to say she's reached her absolute peak, but I really think the upside in terms of the growth and what we're going to see is probably going towards Maycee Barber. So in this spot, she probably has a slight edge in the striking, even though, although maybe not by a ton, I don't know. It's hard to get a real good lean because if this fight goes to the ground, I could see Karine Silva kind of bodying her way, using raw manpower and kind of weight bullying her way through these. So I don't have the best lean. I do have the concerns about Maycee Barber and her mental state, her physical state, if she's going to have an injury like that or some mental lapse or something that's going to make her pull out. I don't know how it's going to affect her future performances. But overall, I guess as a whole, I got to lean Maycee Barber. I think she has the higher cap. I think she's probably more well-rounded overall. So for that reason, I got to go with Maycee Barber, although I could see this fight going either way. I got to say, I won't be super surprised whoever wins this one. But anyway, next up, we got Terrance McKinney versus Chris Duncan. Now, this is going to be a banger of a fight, and I do think this breakdown is pretty easy, honestly, in sense of I feel like it's going to be Terrance McKinney in the first round, and if it goes beyond the first round, it's likely going to be Chris Duncan. We've just seen from Terrance McKinney, that's my dog, and this is a tough ass fight for me because it feels like my parents going at it. You know what I mean? I love both of these guys. These guys are both awesome. I've cashed on both of them, especially Chris Duncan. We can look at some of his recent fights. Chris Duncan has cashed me throughout the years, or I guess he hasn't been in the UFC that long. It was 2023. Yeah. Well, I remember the biggest cash I ever had on Chris Duncan was I had him by submission against Jordan Vucenic. He was like a plus 245, and the submission prop was even higher. I don't know what the hell it was at. It was like plus 400 or something. It was pretty up there. But yeah, I remember Chris Duncan cash is huge in that spot. I was super happy about that one. So I am a big Chris Duncan fan. And besides the bets, I just like him a lot as a person too. I like both of these guys. Terrance McKinney on the other hand, T-Rex, that's my guy. I love them both. So this is a tough one. But I guess emotion aside, who we think is going to win, I do feel like Terrance McKinney, we see from him, when fights go beyond the first round, he really starts to slow down. You know, the main example of that, not the Esteban Riovich, the main one was Nazim Sadykhov, and there was another one too. Who else am I thinking of? I swore there was another one I was thinking of too. No, it wasn't John Woodson. No, who else was I thinking of? Maybe it was the Bonfim fight. This is what it was. Yeah, sorry. It was the Bonfim fight. Because we saw in that fight, he looked good early on. It was back and forth. It was decently competitive. The second round came back, though. Second time, when they got off the stool, second round came around. Terrance McKinney just did not look good. He really slowed down. That was the worst thing. Yeah, he had his mouth guard come out, and that kind of led to him getting knocked out. Wasn't the best look. But it was just, he really started to slow down. And we saw when he slows down, I don't want to say he withers out there, but he does kind of let guys start to take over, and guys can really kind of enter a flow state. We've seen the guys kind of, that's the best way to describe it. It's like when he starts to slow down, he gets his back against the cage, he lets guys walk him down, and at that point, you kind of know it's the beginning of the end, and that Bonfim fight was the perfect example of that. Even the Nazim Sadykhov is a good example of that too, but the one that stood out to me the most was the Ismail Bonfim fight, where he really was just getting walked down against the cage, and anyone with a bit of cardio, and they have power in their hands, is probably going to put him out. So I do feel like Terrance McKinney, I don't want to say he's a round one or bust, but that's just his explosive style. That's how he comes. He comes out super hot early on, and if he can get you out, great, but if not, it's going to be a problem. Now, with Chris Duncan, we've seen his moments of adversity that he's had to deal with it where it hasn't looked great at times. We saw Manuel Torres put him out in the first round. Would I be surprised if Terrance McKinney comes out and does the exact same thing? Not at all. Manuel Torres, his grappling is slept on, but I don't want to say it's super or that far ahead of a guy like Terrance McKinney. Terrance McKinney is very dangerous on the ground. I could see him wrapping up a submission early on against a guy like Chris Duncan. So this one is a hard one to predict because I do think Terrance McKinney round one sub, very likely. Now, we have seen Chris Duncan deal with the round one knockout before. Miroslav Borsov was round two. What was this fight against? Oh no, Charlie Campbell. He got hurt in the spot. He didn't get knocked out. He got hurt in this spot early on. We have seen his chin been tested early on in the round one, but he actually did end up going back from this one. I forgot. I actually thought, in my memory, I thought he got knocked out in that spot. But he got hurt in that spot. He ended up coming back in the knockout. But so we've seen him deal with adversity early on. Sometimes we've seen him go his way. Sometimes it's gone the other way. So how do you pick this one? I mean, looking at the money line, it makes sense. Oh, flip you guys back. The lines do make sense. I will say Chris Duncan should be the favorite in the spot because we saw, especially in his last fight against Rebecca, we saw in that last spot, he was able to go long, dog it out, and his cardio looked absolutely great. I mean, compared to like that style that they were pushing, I mean, it was an absolute war, absolute beatdown. We saw that fight go long, and it was really a good sign that gives me a lot more confidence in Chris Duncan to say, okay, you know, he can go to war. You know, he got that absolute dog in him. If this fight, for whatever reason, were to start round 3, which I don't see it happening, but if it were, yeah, I'd say Chris Duncan's very, 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 very likely to get his hand raised or get the finish in that spot. I just don't know if Terrance McKinney's going to be able to go that long. So I don't want to break this one down super far. I really think it's a simple breakdown in the sense of Terrance McKinney probably round 1 or Chris Duncan fight to start round 2 or go later than that. I mean, I really think that's how this fight likely goes. Now, Chris Duncan definitely could get a round 1 finish. We've seen Terrance McKinney put out in the first round before because Ribovich, he put him on the first round, right? Yeah, that was 37 seconds to the first round, as you can see. So we've seen Terrance McKinney put out in the first round too. For some reason, I thought it was the second round. Or no, it was Nazim, Sadykhov, Ishmael Bonfim. Drew Dober put him on the first round too. I kind of forgot about that one as well. But yeah, so we've seen both guys get finished in the first round before. Could it happen to either guy? Absolutely. You could look at this and say, well, both guys are extremely dangerous, and we've seen both get finished before, especially in the first round. Maybe you take a shot on the dog. It makes sense. I could see this fight going either guy's way. It's hard to pick. For the pick, I'll go Chris Duncan for the pick just because I do think if this fight starts round 2, I think Chris Duncan likely gets the job done. He'll probably end up winning. So I'll take the risk with Chris Duncan in the spot, but I won't be surprised if Terrance McKinney gets him out of there in the first, I will say. But anyway, does it for this one. I guess the pick will be Chris Duncan ever so slightly. But next up, we got Grant Dawson versus Manuel Torres. Talk about a bias. I mean, this is like the Nazim Sadykhov fight. I am big on my boy Manuel Torres. It feels bad. I want to root for my fellow American patriot in Grant Dawson. And I normally always do. But Grant Dawson, man, I'm just not a fan of his style. He seems like a cool guy. He seems like a chill dude. So nothing against Grant Dawson. All respect to him. But Manuel Torres, he's the most fun, exciting style. I love Manuel Torres. He's an absolute dog. He's kill or be killed. And I don't see this fight going long. However, I think Manuel Torres is very live to pull off the upset as an underdog. I don't really know why people would have a ton of confidence in Grant Dawson, other than the fact that you know he's going to stick to a game plan. You know he's going to try and wrestle fuck his way through this entire fight for 15 minutes. And Manuel Torres, he's very explosive. He's very fast twitched muscle fibers. He's going to come out hot, and he's probably going to start to slow down. Although he does have decent cardio, we just know that explosiveness is probably going to start to wane the longer the fight goes on. So I don't know. Would I be surprised if Grant Dawson comes out here, lands a takedown within the first 5 seconds, and just wet blankets his way for 15 minutes? Absolutely not. That's kind of what the line, or not even kind of, that is what the line is suggesting here. But the reason it's not that long or not that wide is because there's that chance that Manuel Torres comes in here and knocks his ass out in the first round. It definitely could happen. So how do I think this fight's going to go? I honestly think that Manuel Torres has a very, very decent chance of winning this fight. Because the one thing I wanted to point out in this fight, in terms of the breakdowns, or sorry, I'll switch you guys back over, get the new lined up, boom, Grant Dawson, Manuel Torres, you guys can see this. I will say, we've seen Manuel Torres looks really good, when we see him struggle at the UFC level, it's because he's going against guys where he's at a reach disadvantage. We go back, you look at his fights where he's winning. Chris Duncan, Nick Mata, Drew Dober, these guys he's all had a reach advantage over. He's had the longer reach. He's able to touch them faster than they can touch him. No diddy. And he's able to find that chin. He's able to find that mark. Even when he's wrapping up submissions, he's just a faster guy. And especially, it's more so on the feet with the reach, but you get my point. With the reach, especially in the striking on the feet, when he struggled against Ignacio Bahamondes, as we've seen, that's the only guy he's had a reach disadvantage to so far. And what we've seen from that fight too is he gets caught basically, because Manuel Torres basically has no striking defense. He is just all balls to the walls. But if you watch that fight back, or watch it back in slow motion, you can see he throws this shot and it gets so close to Ignacio Bahamondes, but Bahamondes just has a longer reach. He's able to get out of range and he can still connect. He can reach back and he counters him because he's within range. He counters him, and it was just the lapse of Manuel Torres, his reach, like his you know what I'm talking about. Like his shot was just 2 inches off to where if he was just an inch shorter, or even that, just an inch shorter, he would have connected. Who knows? Maybe he didn't put Bahamondes out, but he would not have got knocked out because he wouldn't have been able to counter like that. Sorry if that was confusing. Sorry, but hopefully that makes sense in the sense of the real time that we've seen him get caught in the UFC has been when he's been at a reach disadvantage. Other than that, he's looked really damn good. He's looked great in the ground and the grappling. He's looked great on the feet and the striking. Almost zero striking defense, but you look at who he's fighting, Grant Dawson. absolutely no power. Manuel Torres is not going to respect anything that Grant Dawson has coming back his way other than takedowns. And Manuel Torres has really good grappling. I mean, we saw in this fight against Chris Duncan, rear naked choke in 1 minute and 46 seconds. That's pretty damn fast. And Chris Duncan is a high-level grappler, and that fight was, 2024, so not that long ago. So does Grant Dawson have a means to win this fight? Yeah, I would not be surprised at all if Grant Dawson comes in here and wrestle fucks his way to a win across 15 minutes. He could even get a late finish on Manuel Torres. I wouldn't be surprised there either. However, we've just seen the main fight, and I don't want to put too much weight on this. It got into my head. If you told me that this fight against Bobby Green, where he gets knocked out, what was it? 33 seconds. If you told me that Grant Dawson got paid off in that spot, I'd probably believe it. Because, I mean, Bobby Green hits him with a shot. No wind up, no nothing. It was just, I believe it's just a simple jab. No wind up or anything. And he goes out. Very, very suspicious, I will say. Because what was he, a minus 600, minus 500 in the spot? Minus 455? I think the line was even wider than that. But you get my point. It almost looked like he took a dive in that spot, I will say. And you know who hits harder than Bobby Green? Manuel Torres. Manuel Torres, if he touches you, he can put you out. So for this type of a fight, Manuel Torres, I think he's very live for the knockout. Are we going to be lucky enough to get that knockout from him? Probably not. But a man can dream. Maybe I'm just biased, but the pick's going to be Manuel Torres. I think he knocks Grant Dawson out. I think he has a live chance. Will I be surprised if he doesn't? Absolutely not, but a man can dream. But anyway, next up we got Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov. You look at the line here, and that makes perfect sense. Jan Blachowicz, a very, very slight favorite, minus 135. And it makes a lot of sense why this line is the way that it is. Because Jan Blachowicz has proven way more. He's the higher skilled guy. It's just he's 42. That's literally the only thing stopping anyone from picking Jan Blachowicz and kind of going about their day as like the easiest pick of this card. Maybe not that easy. Respect for Bogdan Guskov. He is proven himself. You know, he's been on a nice little run lately. However, you get my point. Jan Blachowicz has just been he's been tested across the much higher level of competition. He's proven a whole lot more against a lot higher level guys. So Bogdan Guskov is a real step down in competition for him. So it makes sense why the line is this close, because it's just he's 42 years old. I mean, 42 versus 33. The numbers don't lie. Statistically, Bogdan Guskov does have a good shot in terms of the numbers on paper of winning this fight. It's just Jan Blachowicz is just better everywhere. I mean, I do think he's more talented everywhere. We've seen holes in Bogdan Guskov's game. You know, I mean, if they keep this on the feet for the full 15 minutes, who knows how it could look. You know, I could see Jan easily winning this fight. Maybe he's at a speed disadvantage. Maybe Bogdan Guskov is able to touch his chin. You know, maybe he's able to just be the faster, more nimble guy. Maybe he gets the job done that way. I don't really know, but Jan is going to have a 2-inch reach advantage in the spot. As you can see, 78 versus 76 inches. How this fight goes, who knows? You know, eventually we're going to see Jan Blachowicz start to slow down and not look as great. But I mean, you look at his recent fights, even within the last 2 years, Alex Pereira split decision. Within the first round, he's on Alex Pereira's back. Who the hell does that to Alex Pereira? Jan Blachowicz is doing it at 40. I mean, it just goes to show how talented Jan Blachowicz is. So I am by no means writing him off in this spot. I got to pick him. I'm going to pick Jan Blachowicz in this spot. But there is that concern. At 42, he is going to start slowing down. Is this the fight? Who knows? Because the level of competition drop, I mean, he's going from guys Big Ank, Alex Pereira, and Carlos Olberg, now to Bogdan Guskov. It is a step down. So even if he is starting to slow down, his skill set is still high enough at a high enough level to where he could still look as good as can be. He could still look like career best in the spot against a lower level competitor like a Bogdan Guskov. So in terms of how this fight goes, I mean, Bogdan Guskov, we've seen lapses in his game before. The main one that really stood out to me was Volkan Oezdemir. So damn fast, rear naked choke in the first round. That was not a good look. You know, Volkan Oezdemir was really able to get to his back so damn fast. And when Volkan was able to get to his back, he kind of seemed like a fish out of water on the ground. Not the best look. And you could just look, if you're just like looking at the Tapology record, you can see, well, he submitted Billy Elikana. That was like a mercy choke where Billy Elikana took the fight on short notice, and he took it, and he was death gassed. He had a moment in the first round. He almost submitted Bogdan Guskov. He was on his back. He was backpacking Bogdan Guskov for like the first 3 minutes of the first round, and he gets to the second round. He's death gassed. He took the fight on short notice. Bogdan Guskov is beating his ass against the cage, and he can't knock the dude out. He won't give up. So eventually he wraps up this like weird, what did they even credit him with? What, a guillotine choke, if you want to call it that. I mean, he was like cowered up against the fence on his back. It was the weirdest thing ever. So don't just look at the record there and be like, well, Bogdan Guskov has a nice submission game. It was not the best look. It was more like a mercy tap type of a thing where he kind of just gave his neck up of like, stop hitting me in the face, dude. Just get me out of here. So I don't know. This one just has, there are a lot of layers to this fight where you could look at this and you could say, let me just go with the younger guy. Statistically, the younger guy wins in this type of a fight. 9-year age gap, probably 66, 67% of the time. You could just go that way, but I'm going to go Jan Blachowicz. I think he's just still proven. He hasn't really slowed down all that much. Even in his fight against Carlos Ulberg, yes, it was a unanimous decision loss. However, some people said he won that fight. So it was very competitive. It was back and forth. So I think if Jan Blachowicz can hang with Carlos Ulberg on the feet at damn near 42 years old, 43, if he's getting there, I think he can do the same against Bogdan Guskov, who's not even quite at that level of a striker as like a Carlos Ulberg. So I think Jan Blachowicz has the tools to get it done. Will the age be a huge deal? Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to see. But the pick's got to be Jan Blachowicz for your boy. Now, next up, we got Henry Cejudo versus Peyton Talbot. This one is a weird-ass fight for me because when I originally looked at this, I did all my notes, I thought the line was going to be a lot closer. I thought, okay, maybe Peyton Talbot's going to be a slight favorite. Maybe like a minus 170, maybe minus 180, maybe even minus a 200. This line is moving. He's not even a minus 275. Peyton Talbot at like damn near a minus 300 favorite. I don't get it. And that's kind of how I was. At first, I was super confused. And I was like, there's no way. Henry Cejudo, they're completely disrespecting him. Do you guys know what Henry Cejudo has done? And then I think about it. I'm like, the man is, we're getting to 40. We're getting there. And he's really slowing down. I'm like looking at his recent fights. You can see in this fight against Song Yudong, although it was this year. For some reason, I thought it was 2024. In that fight, he's not, because the thing I'm looking at is why I think the line is a bit disrespectful to Henry Cejudo is we know he has the wrestling game. He can land takedowns if he wants them, but we've seen in his recent fights, even throughout his career, he's like that. He's kind of fallen in love with the hands. He's not really trying to be some Merab chain wrestler, but in this spot, if he does, he could have a lot of success against a guy like Peyton Talbot because the path is there. We saw what Raoni Barcelos did to Peyton Talbot. Why can't Henry Cejudo do the same? Is it completely impossible for him to do that? Absolutely not. But will he? Does Henry Cejudo even give a shit anymore? And then I think to myself, okay, maybe that's why the line is this wide. We look back, I mean, even his most recent fight against Song Yudong, he's a step behind. Early on in that spot, round one, his striking's looking crisp. He looks fast. He looks really good, honestly. He impressed me in that spot. But just after that first round, speed starts to slow down. He's a step behind, and it kind of just falls apart from there. So that was a 5-round fight, although it didn't go all 5. It's a bit different than a 3-rounder. Maybe he doesn't conserve his energy as much, and maybe in a 3-rounder he looks a bit better. I don't know. It's just a weird one because Henry Cejudo with his age, even in that fight too against Song Yudong, he's not really shooting for takedowns. You can look at the numbers, you can see, okay, he was attempting takedowns. They were the most half-assed takedowns where he's kind of just like reaching for a leg and then he backs back up, to go back to striking. It's almost like just to keep Song Yudong on his toes more than he's actually even going for them. So in a spot like this against Peyton Talbot, if he's sticking to that same game plan that we've seen him have in recent fights, it's not going to be a good look. Peyton Talbot's going to be faster on the feet. He's going to hit harder. Yes, Henry Cejudo has great durability. I mean, he was only finished by Mighty Mouse in his entire UFC career. Yeah, besides that, decision. Yeah, so Mighty Mouse, the only man being able to finish him, and what was that too? That was 2016. So you look at the durability. Both these guys are extremely durable. I won't be surprised if this goes to a decision at all. There's a chance maybe Peyton Talbot could rock Henry Cejudo. Would I be mind blown? No, because he's getting older. He's going to be at a speed disadvantage. I don't know. Like, on one hand, you guys have to let me know your opinions on this in the comments. I'd be very interested to see what you guys think on this one because I get it. On one hand, Peyton Talbot's the younger guy, more than a 10-year age gap. Statistically, he's going to have at least a 70% chance of winning this fight. He's the better striker with more power in the hands. You look at Henry Cejudo, he's not really trying to grapple and land takedowns all that much. He wants to keep it on the feet. He just wants to box in recent fights. It's probably going to lean Peyton Talbot's way. And then you look at the stats too. 6-inch reach advantage for Peyton Talbot. 6-inch height advantage for Peyton Talbot. Then compare that with the 10-year plus age gap. Everything is leaning towards Peyton Talbot in this fight, and it's not even close. Even on the numbers, although against lower level of competition, the significant striking differentials, not even close. I mean, everything is going for Peyton Talbot's way, except striking defense, however. But besides that, Peyton Talbot really has everything going for him in this spot. And then you take a step back, and you're like, okay, look at all the numbers. You look at the career trajectories, look at the stats. Okay, it makes sense maybe why Peyton Talbot's a 3-1 favorite. I fell to the trap of the Raoni Barcelos fight. I can admit I fell victim to the Raoni Barcelos trap. It's a bit of a sore subject because we know what just happened with Ricky Simon too. He keeps getting me. He's got me multiple times, that old man. So I've fallen trapped to the Peyton Talbot trap before. This could be a trap. This could be another one. Will it be? Probably not. Do I expect Henry Cejudo to stick to an extremely smart, dialed game plan, being an extremely technical fighter, doing whatever it takes for the win, basically doing a Raoni Barcelos? Will he do that? I don't think so. Henry Cejudo, who knows if he even gives a shit anymore? He's thinking about retirement. He's already doing his own things outside of the cage. I don't really think his heart's in it at all. It's more so he's just kind of stepping up, doing this for fun. Maybe he proves us wrong. Maybe he proves me wrong in this. We will have to see. But yeah, I just think Peyton Talbot's a lot more checked in. He has the career trajectory going for him. We talked about statistics behind this fight. So I'm going to go with Peyton Talbot. He should get the win as long as Henry Cejudo doesn't come out here going with an extremely Roundy Barcelos-ass game plan. Yeah, Peyton Talbot should probably get his hand raised. So anyway, does it for this one. Next up, we got Brandon Moreno versus Tatsuro Taira. Now, I'm super excited for this one, and I'm surprised about the line. How is Brandon Moreno not the favorite? I think this line is very accurate. I think this is right where the line should be, but I think it should be flip-flopped. Why is Brandon Moreno the underdog in the spot? You already know I'm picking Brandon Moreno. I'm extremely biased in this one, too. What can I say? I'm a huge Brandon Moreno fan. That's my dog. Maybe not today, but maybe tomorrow. I'm going to be tempted. I love Brandon Moreno, all right? That's my dog. I will be rooting for Brandon Moreno. Nothing against Tatsuro Taira. He seems like a cool dude, but Brandon Moreno is my dog. But it's just, you look at the recent fights. Sorry, I got to pull these over. Brandon Moreno, Tatsuro Taira. Who has Tatsuro Taira beaten to warrant him being a favorite over Brandon Moreno? Are we serious right now? Are we being dead ass? Are we being serious? What has warranted this? What is warranted? Alex Perez looked damn good in that spot up until he got hurt. Brandon Royval lost a split decision. The only rounds that Tatsuro Taira won in that fight were rounds that he was able to have like 4 minutes of control time. Besides that, it was one-sided for Brandon Moreno. Tatsuro Taira, his striking's looking better. I will say it's improving. It's not at Brandon Moreno level, and it's not at a Brandon Royval level. And besides that, Hyung Sung Park, he stepped up on short notice, and he ran right through him, face crank in round 2. How does that warrant being a favorite over Brandon Moreno? We're comparing Carlos Hernandez to Davison Figueiredo? That's the level of competition we're comparing right now? We're comparing Edgar Chairez to Guy France? Are we serious? Are we serious? Jesus Aguilar, CJ Vergara. I'll put some respect on Jesus Aguilar. CJ Vergara versus Brandon Royval? Are we being serious? Brandon Moreno is the underdog here? Am I mentally insane? Am I missing something? This seems like a complete flip-flop. I mean, if Brandon Moreno was a minus 200 favorite, I'd be like, I could see it. Maybe it's a bit too wild for me to get behind, but I could see it. Brandon Moreno at underdog line is a great value play. I will 1,000,000% be having something on Brandon Moreno at this spot. I mean, it just makes all the sense in the world. Tatsuro Taira, 25 years old, he is going to get better with every single fight, so he's going to rapidly improve, especially in the striking, because we already know his grappling is elite. We already know at 25 years old, it's insane what he's able to do on the ground. Striking, though, I just don't know if he's going to be able to hang with Brandon Moreno. And we see Brandon Moreno is not a fish out of water on the ground. Brandon Moreno is a good grappler. He's good at scrambling. He's good at preventing takedowns. You can see his takedown defense, 64%. Pretty damn solid considering he's fighting the best on planet Earth for the last, 10 years? I just don't know how people are going so heavy on Tatsuro Taira. It doesn't make sense to me at all. Brandon Moreno is going to be the pick here. He's just proven so much more. 31 years old, Brandon Moreno is in his physical prime, too. We have seen the best version of Brandon Moreno. We're going to see it. We're going to see. He's already had the belt. Now we're seeing him on a second run, and that's the thing, too. People were worried about Brandon Moreno in terms of his mentality, where he's at mentally, where his mindset is at. He's already had the belt. He went through this rocky patch when he had these losses. Roy Val and Alexander Pantoja, both split decision losses. It was a bad time for him in the sense of people thought mentally he was checked out. After this last little 2-fight win streak he's been on, he's been looking great. He's mentally bounced back. He has the momentum again. He's feeling like his old self again. I can see it in him. And that's what it makes me excited, because I'm a big Brandon Moreno fan. It's glad to see him being back. And although the level of competition in the wins aren't amazing, Merab, not the best one. You see his record, it's like, oh my God, is this guy like Topuria or Ian Gary? No, nowhere near. Still a respectable win. Same with Steve Erceg. Steve Erceg hasn't proven to be the best level. However, Steve Erceg's still a very impressive win nonetheless, where he really kind of just had his way. He made Steve Erceg not look the best in that spot. So the pick's got to be Brandon Moreno. I think he gets the job done. I think a crafty veteran comes out here, gets the job done against the young buck like Tatsuro Taira. I think Tatsuro Taira is probably going to be the future champ. I mean, I'm totally with the Tatsuro Taira hype train. I'm all aboard. It's just at 25 years old, I think he's going to need a couple more years to develop. I think the level of competition in his way that's stopping him from being the champ right now is just too high of a level. In a couple more years, yeah, they'll probably be out the way. By the time Tatsuro Taira is 30, he'll probably have the damn belt. It's just at this point in time, I think Brandon Moreno just too high level. He's in his physical prime. He has the much higher level experience. He's fought the much higher level of competition. He's beaten the much higher level of competition. And he's not a guy who needs to grapple to win. You know, Brandon Moreno can win anywhere a fight goes. Tatsuro Taira, at his highest level of competition against Brandon Royval, the only way he's winning rounds is when he's just wet blanketing. That's the only way he wins. Besides that, I mean, literally a 5-round fight. He won 2 out of the 3, or 2 out of the 5. He won 2 rounds. He lost 3. The 2 rounds he won, I believe he had at least 4 minutes of control time. So it just goes to show, I don't think he's going to be able to have that level of success against Brandon Moreno. Although, I get people's arguments in this fight that it's a 3-rounder. I get it. And I think that does probably favor Tatsuro Taira because Brandon Moreno has all this 5-round experience. So I get that line of thinking. I totally get it. And I think it does probably help Tatsuro Taira if he comes in with a very heavy grappling game plan. Maybe he can exert more energy. Maybe he can push the grappling at a higher pace. I won't be surprised Tatsuro Taira comes in here and wins the first round. I won't be mind blown at all. It's just a matter of if he can get it done for the last 2 out of 3 rounds and kind of secure it on scorecards. Who knows? I'm going with my dog, Brandon Moreno. I am a bit biased in the spot, so maybe that's my own biasy, but I do think Brandon Moreno's just proven a lot more against a higher level of competition. 31 years old in his physical prime. Tatsuro Taira, not as well-rounded, and I think Brandon Moreno should be able to get the job done. So, does it for this one. Next up, we got Alexander Pantoja versus Josh Van. I honestly feel like this matchup is a bit disrespectful to Alexander Pantoja. I will say, it feels a bit disrespectful. I just don't think Josh Van's there yet, man. I really don't think this line is wide enough. I don't know what warrants this. I get Josh Van's been on a crazy run, and it's so impressive. You look 8-1 in the UFC, like, holy shit, Josh Van's unstoppable. He ain't fought Pantoja, though, man. Pantoja's a different animal, dude. Pantoja's an absolute beast. This is kind of like the Tatsuro Taira and Brandon Moreno. You compare these guys' resumes. Although the Brandon Royval fight was a very good fight, you look at that fight, you watch it back, he arguably could have lost the fight. He just won it in the last 30 seconds with that last second knockdown over Royval. Besides that, let's say he lost that fight, he wouldn't be here. He wouldn't be here. I just don't know how anyone can pick Josh Van in the spot. His grappling is just... The striking, you know, I totally get it. I think Josh Van's cardio, elite. Striking, very high level. It's just the grappling. There's a major skill gap here. Pantoja is an elite grappler, and Josh Van is not there. The gap between these two and the grappling is here. The difference between the two of them in terms of the striking is probably here. So I think the grappling difference is going to be way too much for Josh Van to handle. I don't know, though. It'll be interesting to see. Let's say Josh Van is able to survive the early rounds. Maybe rounds 1, 2, maybe even 3. He's not getting finished, but he's able to survive, go long. I don't worry about his cardio. Whereas Pantoja, we have seen him slow down a bit as fights go on. You know, he has that iron chin on him. He has a granite chin, so we're not seeing him get finished. I could see, if this were to go to the scorecards, I could see this looking a lot closer. Like, I could see this being a 48-47. I could totally see that. Don't get me wrong. I could see Josh Van winning rounds 4 and 5, maybe Pantoja 1 through 3. That would make a lot of sense to me. I just feel like the grappling in terms of the raw submission threat from Alexander Pantoja is just too much for Josh Van. I mean, we see Pantoja, he's been able to submit guys who have a lot more UFC experience at a higher level. Guys like Kaikara France. Pantoja just kind of had his way on the ground. I mean, when did he submit him? The second round, I believe, third round there. Kai Asakura, that's a different kind of exception there. I mean, we've seen his holes in his grappling have been a lot more than we thought they were. So the second round submission there. But even then, Steve Erceg, yeah, I guess honestly, you could argue the Steve Erceg fight, it is what it is about that one. Brandon Royval, Brando, the split. I could get where you could say, okay, well, Josh Van has that elite cardio. You know, he's able to get back up pretty decently well. If Pantoja can't take him down and control him, it could be a problem. I'm trying to play devil's advocate and try to think of a good argument for Josh Van. I just can't see it. I just think the overwhelming grappling deficiency, or at least difference in skill, is going to be the real difference in this fight. I think Pantoja probably gets done inside the distance. I think it most likely is a submission, and I just don't think Josh Van's ready yet. 24 years old. Josh Van would have to be a generational talent. Imagine, if he beats Pantoja, Josh Van would have to be a generational talent. 24 years old, beating arguably the GOAT of the division. How does that happen? It's not going to happen. Pantoja likely submits his ass, maybe a decision. I feel like submission is the most likely. Hell, we've seen Josh Van knocked out. Maybe Pantoja cracks his ass. Anything could happen. I feel like Pantoja's the pretty easy spot to pick here in this spot, or in this fight. I just don't really see Josh Van being able to do it unless maybe he's able to out cardio Pantoja and win the fourth and fifth round, and maybe two judges give him the third, Pantoja should win the spot. Submission's very likely. It's got to be the pick. Pretty clear for your boy. Pantoja should definitely get the job done here. But anyway, next up, this is kind of a similar situation. I mean, it feels like they just ran out of people to give Merab, so they're giving him Petr Yan again, and I don't think this fight's going to look all too much different than the first. Or at least, if it will look different, it's probably because Merab's going to be out there playing with his food, not necessarily that he's fighting life or death to win the belt or defend his belt. So, we saw the first fight. I mean, 50-45, domination. Merab was on fire. And the thing is, Merab just gotten better. He's gotten better and better, dude. Merab is the Thanos. He is quite literally, I say Merab is the GOAT of the bantamweight division. I think he's the best to ever do it. I think his last couple fights have absolutely proven it. I mean, the guy is just unstoppable. And the thing about him, too, yes, it's the cardio. You could say it's a naturally given gift that he's had. But the wrestling, I mean, he's still an elite wrestler. He has great control. He has great submissions. He submitted Sean O'Malley. And I know he doesn't have that many submissions. You look at his record, only 2 out of his 21 wins are by submission. Not the best look, but still, the guy is able to just do it all. In the recent fights, too, he's outstriking guys like Corey Sandhagen. What the hell is going on with Merab? I mean, the guy is unstoppable. I mean, he has time and time again proven me wrong. Not even proving me wrong, just impressed me. Just continuing to raise the bar for how good he is with every single fight. At 34 years old, he's not over the hill. He's in his damn prime right now. And I just don't see a way for Petr Yan to win this fight. How is Petr Yan going to win this fight? Petr Yan's a slow starter who gives up rounds, and you just can't do that against Merab. You cannot afford to be a slow starter against Merab Dvalishvili. If you do that, you are fucked. And that's likely what's going to happen here. Petr Yan's going to give up the first round. Maybe he gets the second. Maybe he gets the third. But fourth and fifth, he is screwed. I mean, the last fight, damn, I should have put this in my notes. My last fight that, when he fought Sean, or no, maybe it was Sandhagen. It was one of those two. I went through Merab Dvalishvili in the UFC. Whenever it's, I forget the exact stat. I'm blanking on it. It's one of my older videos. I have it. I should have put it in here. But when Merab is in a 3-round fight, he doesn't lose the 3rd round or the 2nd round. And it's when he's in a 5-round fight, he doesn't lose the 4th or the 5th round. And he's done that in, I believe, every single UFC fight except for 2 times where he's given up a later round. I believe he lost the 5th round in the first Suga fight, Suga Sean, and one was way earlier. So this man does not, my point of that, because those numbers are probably a bit off. I know the Suga one was one of the later fights. But anyway, my point of that is saying Merab does not lose later rounds. He doesn't do it. If you have to win rounds 1 through 3 in a Merab fight, or you're fucked, or you lose. You lose. Petr Yan is notoriously a guy who has a slow starter who gives up early rounds. That is like the recipe for how to lose to Merab. I mean, it's not going to be good. And now, I mean, what advantage does he have in this spot? He's going to be at a reach disadvantage, cardio disadvantage, although Petr Yan does have very good cardio. But I mean, the striking Merab's gotten so much better. I just don't see any way that Petr Yan can win this fight. I don't see any way possible. He'd have to knock Merab out. Or Merab just doesn't give a shit and he's taunting and he gets caught with something. I mean, he'd have to knock him out. What other way can Petr Yan win this fight? And that's the thing too. Statistically, when guys have rematches, the fighter who won the first fight ends up winning the rematch at about a 70% clip. And this was not no ordinary like first fight. You know, it wasn't a back and forth split decision. It was a 50-45. I can't say Petr Yan's gotten that much better, but I damn sure could say Merab has gotten a ton better. His striking has completely evolved. So I don't even need to ramble about this one all that much. Merab Dvalishvili, clear pick, easy as day. I mean, I'd be mind blown if he lost. And I think the only way he loses is if he gets knocked out. That would have to be it. Other than that, I don't see a way. I don't see Petr Yan submitting him. I mean, only one submission whenever. Not going to happen. Decision win. You're not beating Merab on the scorecards. Even Umar couldn't do it. And I think Umar would probably beat Petr Yan. I just don't see. I don't see a way for Merab to lose. I think Merab's too powerful. He needs a nerf ASAP. He's too powerful. He's the GOAT. And the GOAT probably gets it done again. So anyway, guys, that does it for the video. Yeah, there's no point of talking about this one all that much longer. Merab gets it done. So anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's going to be a bit longer than normal. However, I just feel like there was a lot to talk about. Hope you guys enjoyed the new type of graphics switching up so you can compare the fights, kind of go over them so you guys could see them. If you do like that, let me know in the comments down below. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for the love on the videos. We're back, UFC 323. Super excited to drop this video for you guys. Hopefully, you can do some great success with the picks and the bets this week. I'm super excited about this card. So anyway, guys, we're going to get this one up to you ASAP here in the next hour or so. It's Monday morning, about 11 a.m., so we'll get this video up to you guys soon. But thank you guys so much for all the love on the videos. Thank you guys for all the support. Get this one out to your ASAP, and make sure you guys stay tuned. We got the locks and traps. We got the best bets video. We got the weigh-in recap. Like per usual, we'll be coming back with banger videos this week. So anyway, guys, I'll see you guys soon. It's your boy Jacob from Topside MMA, and I'm out, so peace.